Welcome back to another video from the PME Coach. If you're receiving these videos well, then make sure you do share, because there's a lot of good quality information that can help so many other people out there. So today's video is a quick look at how emotion links with thought. So how emotion and thought link together and how they work and feed each other in the loop. So we're going to go and we're going to use a past traumatic experience. Say for instance that let's go with rejection. Rejection's like a massive thing on the planet, a massive thing in people. So let's start with rejection. Say for instance, as a child, we become say we have parents that are emotionally unavailable. Now, you'd be surprised at how many people are emotionally unavailable. We are talking about a worldwide epidemic of people that are emotionally unavailable. Why are people emotionally unavailable? Because they are disengaged from their own painful emotions. But we're going to get into that in a later video. Now, that's not saying that you don't provide a high level of care for your children, because there are many parents out there that actually truly do cherish and love their children. But everything on this planet at the moment is conditional. So even when we love our children to the best of our ability, we add them to ourselves, they become a part of ourselves, we have an attachment to them. Because we have an attachment to our children, there is always going to be some form of controlling aspect, because to lose our children would be to lose a part of ourselves. This is the problem. We identify with the things that we have in our life, and when we identify with things that we have in our life, we attach ourselves to them. So there is always going to be a level of conditioning imposed upon them. But going back to how thought links with emotion. And we're going to use a traumatic event as a child growing up. Say for instance we experienced rejection from a parent. Now as we experience this rejection, and how many people do you know whose fathers are not about, or whose mothers are emotionally disconnected? As we begin to experience this rejection, trauma is elicited, an emotional trauma is elicited, we separate from that trauma, but then at the same time there is the thoughts with the emotion. So, say for instance, my dad don't love me. As a child, we tell ourselves, my dad don't love me. That elicits a emotional trauma in us. But with this emotional trauma that has rejected written on it, there is also the link into the mind of, I'm not loved, I'm not wanted. Okay, so now when you experience something in your life, some form of rejection, whether it's a friend, whether it's a work, whether it's a job, whether it's something, if we experience some form of rejection, what happens is that emotional piece in us comes alive. As it becomes alive and comes up in us, so do the thoughts that become active in our mind of rejection. Now, as the emotion becomes alive, as we ignite it, as it becomes triggered, the thoughts in our mind that give rise to this emotion become triggered as well. So all of a sudden in our thoughts we can't stop thinking about rejection. Now we might have forgot, because we've pushed this trauma away, this original trauma, we might not know where the origin of this trauma comes from, because we've disidentified from it. So what our conscious mind does is it starts to look at what's triggered it in our environment. So say for instance we've come across somebody that's rejected us, a partner or something that we picked up later on in life. We look at that person as the one that's caused the pain, when in fact that person you was only ever going to experience someone that was going to reject you because you hold this traumatic event of rejection. You cannot hope that some knight in some shining armor is going to come in and save the day and be the best person you've ever met. Because if you're holding a traumatic experience in you, then you're not going to line up with somebody that's going to be the complete opposite. You're going to line up with somebody that's going to cause you a rejection trauma. So whenever these become active, whenever these traumatic events become active, what comes active with them is the thought patterns associated with them. Now if we just completely confine to our minds, which means we can't escape our minds, what happens is our thoughts, we are energizing our mind by giving conscious attention to our mind, our thoughts, by being consciously identified with our thoughts. We energize the thoughts, we believe the thoughts. He done this, she done that, why would they do this to me, why would they do that to me? As we begin to do that, as we begin to energize and entertain these thoughts are feeding the emotion. So they're creating a loop. this loop that is now the original emotion, it's expanding and getting bigger and bigger and bigger, because we're generating that emotion, and we're actually we're charging that emotion. This is how emotions become so big that they completely consume us. But that event that happened on the surface, that event only happened because you had this, you have this trauma already in you. That's the only reason you drew in someone that rejected you, because you have an attraction point of rejection. But most people are so focused on what's going on in their current life that they're blaming the events that are currently happening, not realizing that the events are only currently happening to them because they're being triggered on an emotion that's already there, because they're actually drawing in these events. Hold on, my dog is going crazy. 1 minute. Emotion and thoughts, they work in a loop. So how do we begin to separate how do we stop feeding this emotion with our thoughts? Well, we have to take conscious attention. So what is conscious attention? Consciousness, when it's self-realized, is the part that is most true in you. Yeah? So the part that is most true, the eternal part of you, is the pure consciousness. Pure consciousness. Now, your consciousness or your conscious attention can either be in thought. When your conscious attention, if you look at consciousness or your consciousness as like a battery, as like a infinite source of energy. Now that infinite source of energy can be plugged into our mind and energizing our thoughts, which are then linking into the emotion. So this is how you truly energize emotion, through your thoughts, because the conscious energy that we are is identified with the thoughts, is plugged into the mind. So it's energizing the mind, and the mind is energizing the emotion. So what we have to do is we have to withdraw consciousness out of our mind and place it in the body. Now if you begin, and try this at home, you can do this at any time, any point, and that's beginning to place attention in the body. Now attention can either be in thoughts, or you can be feeling the body. Now if you begin to feel your hands, don't think about where your hands are. If you just begin to feel your hands, you will notice that you cannot feel and think at the same time. Both require conscious attention. So whenever we pull our consciousness into our body, which is to be present in the moment, whenever we pull our consciousness into our body, we stop feeding the mind. So what we need to do to break the link between emotion and thought, we need to pull our attention out of thought and place it on emotion, which is begin to feel the body, begin to feel the emotion. Now when we begin to feel the emotion, we're going directly to the root. We're going to the root of the emotion. We're actually going direct to the feeling, rather than the feeling consuming us because we're up here in the thoughts. So the link between feeling and thinking. Trauma, when triggered, creates the traumatic thoughts. Thoughts feed emotion. How we stop this loop from happening is taking our conscious awareness out of our thoughts and placing it into our feelings by coming out of our mind and into our body. When you begin to do this, when you begin to truly be with your feelings, which is to give conscious attention to your feelings and to be with your feelings, to acknowledge your feelings, to begin to understand your feelings, then you begin to start the process of cleansing your past trauma. As you begin to cleanse past trauma, it makes sense that your mind becomes a lot more at ease, a lot more peaceful. Because when we stop getting triggered by the external world because we hold traumatic events, it makes sense that our mind is not being flooded with these negative thoughts. The more past emotion you cleanse, the less negative thoughts you have in your head. I mean, I've been given the gift to truly see the human condition. And these videos are going to resonate with so many people. And the reason they're going to resonate is because there's so much truth being spoken, but we're talking about a deeper truth. A much deeper truth to our whole existence. Now, I've been given the blessing of actually being self-realized, of actually my consciousness being fully freed from this embodiment of a person. And I want you to begin to understand that every time we disidentify from belief systems, we release emotion. Behind that emotion and then beliefs that we've been contained in and stuck in for so long, there is that freedom of inner peace. What happens is you begin to have a natural expression of yourself. But to become more natural, we have to get rid of what's unnatural. And what's unnatural is your traumatic experiences, your beliefs that contain you and confine you, because we are limitless. In our essence, we are completely and utterly limitless. So to be limited to a belief is always going to be painful. Disconnect from your thoughts, go into the body, feel your emotions, understand your emotions, see how the emotion is surfacing in your mind. When you begin to understand it and unravel it and go to the root of the feeling and understand the feeling and release it, and release that trauma, release that pent up emotion, you're going to feel freer and freer and freer till you get to the point where every day is blissful. Every day you wake up and just the beauty of being alive is truly stunning. Your interactions with other people are going to come out of a place of oneness, out of a place of connection, out of a place of wholeness. Keep helping me share this knowledge. Help me share these videos. Till the next one, love, peace and joy.